Hello, my friends. I'm Samantha, and welcome to the Sedge Circle podcast. How are you today? I hope you're well. Spring is right around the corner, and I know I talk a lot about how much I love the fall and winter. They are indeed my favorite seasons, but I would be lying if I said I didn't appreciate the longer days and the flowers blooming everywhere. There's something to be appreciated for all the seasons, even summer. And if you're a fan of summer, I do apologize for my disdain, but I'm just not a fan of hot weather, as I've said before. So with spring right around the corner, I thought I would take a moment to talk about how to welcome in the spring with witchcraft. Life is a series of tilling, sowing, harvesting, and resting. The phases of the moon are essentially miniature or faster moving versions of the seasons and vice versa. The energies of the solstices and equinoxes are much like the moon phases, only on a larger scale. The first part of the year, beginning in the spring, is much like the new moon. We're starting fresh and getting ready to set some intentions. Summer is like the first quarter moon, where our intentions are growing. Fall is like the full moon, when we harvest those intentions. And winter, the last quarter moon, is when we rest. One important thing I think we need to remember is that nature and her seasons do not simply start and stop. Each solstice and equinox marks not only the beginning of the new season, but the end of the old. We don't wake up one day to find every single flower blooming in the spring, nor do we find them all withered and dead on the autumn equinox. Nature moves gracefully into each season and allows time for gentle transitions, which I think is some loving kindness we could offer ourselves as well. Another thing I feel that is important to mention is that we are not beholden to the energies of these seasons. We can do some very profound growing in the winter, as well as rest in the summer. That being said, I find that by living in rhythm with the seasons helps me to better attune to nature and her cycles, and in turn become more connected to myself. Spring is very much still a time of cleansing, though we're not deciding what to keep and what to discard anymore as we were when we were consolidating back in the winter. We're preparing a clean space to activate our intentions. Much like a farmer tills the field to ready it for planting his crops. I call spring the tide of planting or activation. It is when we metaphorically plant all those intentions we started thinking about back in the winter months. We'll grow them through the summer and harvest them in the fall, or even earlier, but that is the general rhythm of the tilling, sowing, harvesting, and resting. So in today's podcast, I would like to offer a few ideas as to how to welcome the spring as a witch. One thing you might consider doing is some physical self-care. Many animals during this time are shedding their winter coats, So why not take advantage of that energy as well? It can be something as simple as trimming your nails, your hair, or even getting a full-on haircut if the mood strikes you. If you cut your hair, you can even leave some of it outdoors for birds to use in their nests and as an offering to nature. As you do these things, meditate on releasing any old stagnant energy you might be carrying around with you. A tradition my family and I have is the burning of the Yule tree on the equinox. We live out in the country and have a pretty substantial fire pit that my lover built that serves this ritual perfectly. My family and friends who want to participate will gather and we'll spend some time writing things we would like to banish from our lives on scraps of ribbon, fabric, or even paper and tie them to the tree. We thank the tree for its service and use it to light the first bonfire of the season with it. You can do this same kind of practice if you live in an apartment or even in the city, even if you can't have a fire. If you can't have a fire, consider writing the things you wish to banish on a candle and allowing that candle to burn out. The symbolism is essentially the same and serves the same purpose. The next suggestion I would like to make is a ritual fasting. If you have been listening to me for a while, you know I do a lot of work with my ancestors. In the spring, my ancestors would not have had an overabundance of fresh foods. Their saving grace was most likely things like milk from the domestic animals that had given birth that season, early plants that had been foraged, meat that they had preserved in the previous year, as well as eggs from chickens they kept. Eggs are becoming very abundant during this time of year. If you have chickens, like I do, you're most likely aware of that. So it is no coincidence that eggs are such an important part of most spring celebrations. And I have intentions on doing an entire podcast just on eggs. But I digress. I like to keep that scarcity in mind on the spring equinox. The scarcity of food for my ancestors, and offer a fasting ritual in honor of this. In this ritual, I will mindfully plant some seeds indoors the morning of the equinox. I will not eat breakfast, but will enjoy either some black coffee or a nourishing herbal tea without sweetener throughout the day. This fast is a time of conscious reflection of how the earth provides, how I will serve the earth, as well as a time to consider any personal intentions I will be setting. I will spend as much time as I can in meditation and gratitude for all that I am given. When I plant the seeds, I may even write just a few words on a slip of paper to plant with them, so that as the seeds grow, so do my intentions. After the sun sets and I have enjoyed my coffee and herbal tea throughout the day, I will mindfully have a light dinner of seasonal foods, if at all possible. This can look like hard-boiled eggs and an early green salad, but it all truly depends on where you live and what is seasonal at the time. Some people will fast until the first sprout emerges from the seeds they planted, but this is not something that works for me. And by all means, I have to suggest, of course, that you check with your healthcare specialist before going through any kind of fast. As always, just do what works best for you. The amount of time that you fast is completely up to you and whatever is comfortable. The last idea I would like to suggest is a little spiritual weed control. As we set our intentions for the upcoming growing season, it can be easy to start feeling a little ungrounded or even overwhelmed. I find grounding especially difficult during the summer months, as the energy of that time is fast moving and we are experiencing an abundance of growth and activity. Consider all the things that unground you to be weeds. If you have ever planted a garden, you know that keeping up with the weeds can be very challenging. Spiritual weeds are the things that keep your intentions from growing to their fullest. They're things like self-doubt, fear, jealousy, guilt, and so on. Now, one of the best ways to deal with weeds is through prevention. When we grow plants outdoors, we will typically lay some mulch on the ground to deter weeds from growing there. You can do this yourself by creating a witch bottle full of things that remind you of your positive qualities. In fact, some fellow witches and I actually did this back on the last full moon in preparation for the coming spring. If witch bottles aren't your thing, you can also enchant a ring or pendant you wear often to remind yourself of those positive qualities. I find when I am feeling discouraged or off course, I will call on the energies of my witch bottle to keep me grounded in a place of self-love. Now, weed control also takes consistent diligence. When weeding a physical garden, you can spend an entire day pulling weeds only to find that more have sprouted in their place the next day. And this can be very frustrating. And it can happen in a spiritual garden as well. Each day, we are faced with new challenges and changes that can stifle our growth. I find it helpful to set aside time consistently to check in with myself to see where I am with my intentions, as well as to address any issues I might be facing with them. This can look like a short daily meditation session, daily journaling, or even a mindful cup of tea before bed. Even if it's only once a month, just make sure you are doing it consistently so as not to be overcome by spiritual weeds. So that, my friends, I suppose is everything that I wanted to talk about today. What are some things that you are planning to plant, either physically or spiritually, with the coming spring? Feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And as always, if you like this podcast and want to show your support, you can always make a donation at buymeacoffee.com. The link is in the description. Or just simply like this video and subscribe. You can also turn on the notification bell to know when new episodes are uploaded. I do try to put out new episodes every Friday, so if you don't see this podcast in your notifications, you can always check back then. I want to thank you very much for giving me your time today, as I know it is precious. And until we meet again,